Did you know that colorectal cancer is one of the most preventable cancers, yet it remains the second leading cause of cancer-related deaths? The key to beating it is awareness, early detection, and simple lifestyle changes. We feel like we say this every week. In this episode, we're breaking down everything you need to know: symptoms, risk factors, screenings, and the latest treatments. So you can take control of your health, and I can take control of my tongue. Whether you're here for yourself or a loved one, this information would be life-saving. Welcome, everybody. This is the Life Enthusiast online radio and TV network, restoring vitality to you and the planet. I'm your co-host, Scott Patton. Joining us, as usual, is Martin Patella and our number one fan, George Sheenan. How are you doing, everybody?
George, you're a beautiful human being, I tell you. Whatever it is, you have been through it. You probably have the t-shirt too. And if you don't have a t-shirt, you may have a few stripes here on your military decorations, or God knows what's with you. Right. Anyways, send a picture. So colorectal. No, I can't pronounce it either.
It's not an easy word.
Colorectal. Well, listen, you have a rectum, which is the part of the ass, as George would declare it. So there's the sphincter, then there's the space, and then there's the turn. If you put your finger in about to here, up your rectum, you will find the turn in the colon. And then you are in the descending colon, and then you're in the sigmoid colon, and then you're in the ascending colon, and then you are right at cecum, where the small intestine turns into the large intestine. Anyway, so that's the colon.
What does the colon do, Martin?
Yeah, in your body, it starts in the bottom right, where you would have this stitchy pain. That if you have a stitchy pain, that's usually the interface between the small and the large intestine. Colon. I think the number one goal is to retrieve water from the slurry that's coming down through the small intestine. Like, the food is massaged and pre-digested in the stomach. It's taken apart and nutrient extracted in the small intestine. And then the final processing is done in the large intestine, in the colon.
So the colon is kind of like the sewer system. We're getting rid of
that. It's a recycling plant. It would be more like the the plants that it's the end of the sewer system, where the final processing, I can't think of the word right now, but it's something like sewage plant or something like that. What do they call it in the cities? Can you think of a better word?
Sewage plant.
Okay, then.
So in other words, everything that the body doesn't want ends up there, hopefully, and then gets thrown out.
But the water is taken away and recycled.
That's why it's not the same as when we pee.
Right. And what we do not want is the inside of
treatment
the
plant. George says it's treatment plant. We need to have you on the show, George. Thanks. All the time.
Thanks for the help, George. Anyway, the colon, the inner surfaces of the colon, it's a pipe, could end up being coated with, caked on, dried on, what we call the mucoid plaque. This plaque could look sort of like a skin of a snake. Kind of black, gooey, ugly thing that if you're pulling the water through it, It's really a very unappetizing concept. Most people are not really happy drinking water that's been just out of the treatment plant.
Right.
The concept is just,
But
it,
sometimes this stuff sticks to the inside of the pipe you're talking about.
yeah, exactly.
That's where we have our problem.
Yeah. And so here we have, so whenever the wall of the colon, and why visualize it like this, it's actually peristaltically moving stuff along. And so there are these muscles that are cross the length, and they can be separated. And if they separate, the colon starts bulging up, and that will become a little diverticulum. It's a pocket that bumps out of the colon, and stuff will move slower in there. And if something gets stuck in that little diverticulum, the little side pocket, it will fester. It could get inflamed. And if it gets that, then you will have diverticulitis, an inflammation of diverticulum. And then you'll get treated with antibiotics, which will wipe out the natural microbiome. Yeah, so osis, diverticulosis, is the continuous problem, and itis is the inflammation. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, that's a very undesirable thing, because they'll hit you with antibiotics and then they'll destroy the natural balance of things, and it's going to be a significantly difficult process to get it all back in balance.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, Martin, you just reminded me, I have a very good friend in Greece, and his daughter contacted me 3 days ago, and he had been in the hospital. He'd had an operation for 10.5 hours because he had a hole in his colon, and they needed to get in there, find the hole, close the hole, and I guess he was just like, it's like poison was going all throughout his body because he had this leak.
Yeah, so that space is called peritoneum, and peritonitis would be an inflammation of the entire space within you. Like when you get a bullet wound in your belly, or any injury, like a sword in your belly or a bullet in your belly, it will puncture the small intestine and possibly the large intestine, depending where it goes. And now, remember, to describe the tube that starts at your mouth and runs through the stomach and intestine and colon and out, that's the dirty side. It goes within us, but it's actually the outside running through the middle. The best analogy to visualize it is an earthworm. An earthworm has a straight pipe that starts at the front end and runs through the middle, and you can see the dirt in an earthworm. Right? Like you can see the dark line going through the middle of it, and then it comes out on the other side. Anyway, so when you get the dirt into the sensitive, fragile, supposedly sterile part of your body, it's a massive disaster. They essentially need to cut you open, stem to stern, all the way, take everything out, wash it with sterile saline, rinse you out, sterilize you, probably load you with antibiotics inside and out, and put it all back in place and sew you up. It's I can't imagine worse than that operation.
Right.
And the guy that founded Exula, Javari, had at some point in his life a colonoscopy. And during the colonoscopy, they perforated his colon. And so he indeed was made toxic by his own poop that was going into his cavity. And that was part of the thing that took him down.
Right.
Yeah.
So if something goes wrong with your colon, there's a big problem.
Oh,
so
yeah. Yeah, a hole in the colon is holy shit.
Right. In more ways than one.
Yep.
So let's talk about what causes the cancer part of this issue. because
Right.
cancer is not a hole in your colon.
Right. So cancer cells become cancerous when they lose their metabolic ability. For some reason, a cancer cell is designed by the body to produce acids. Lactic acid is the main, but propionic, valeric, and whatever else acids. Greetings to others. Okay, so think of it this way. Your body requires a balance of alkalinity and acidity. Starting with your mouth. When you ingest food, your mouth is supposed to be alkaline. You're perceiving it as sweetness and smoothness. Then you swallow it. In your stomach, the pH is supposed to go very strongly acidic. It goes to pH of 1.5 or 2, really acidic. Now your stomach is coated on the inside with a lot of mucus, and it's protecting itself, but it's really acidic. And that's designed to kill off infectious things and also to just break down the food that you brought in. Then, when it's finished processing, usually 2 to 3 hours in the stomach, the bottom valve opens up and the chyme, CHYME, leaves the stomach into the small intestine. And just as it's leaving, the pancreas is inserting a whole bunch of sodium bicarbonate to neutralize this chyme, because the small intestine is supposed to be alkaline. Because the microbes that are doing their work in the small intestine need to work at the pH that's somewhere above 7.5, close to 8, something like that. So alkalizing the small intestine. And then at the end of the small intestine, we're moving into the large intestine, and the pH needs to be switching to acidic. And it needs to be more acidic than 6.5. So lower than 6.5. If your poop is too alkaline, you have a serious problem in your colon. And then there's the cancer cell. The cancer cell's divine design is to make acid. So if there isn't enough acid in your body, which you will get through, how do you get lactic acid? You probably know. When you exercise toward exhaustion, toward the limit, like your muscles will get stiff and you get crampy. That's when lactic acid is being made by your own cells. So if you don't have enough lactic acid in your body, I think the body will sacrifice some of its own cells and start making these acids. A cancer cell is an obligate glucose metabolizer, taking in carbohydrates and converting them into these acids. So I speculate that it may happen that it's by divine design that the body decides that there's not enough lactic acid in your body, and it's going to actually use sacrifice some cells and start making acid right there on the spot. Now we see that as a problem. We see that as a disaster, but it could be that the body actually wants to do it because it needs it. The precancerous cells in the colon are known as polyps. And when you get a colonoscopy, which is inserting a camera up from the rectum and looking around, they are looking for these abnormal looking islands of tissue. And if you have a polyp, they'll snip it out. They have these tiny little scissors, and they will just knock out the piece of the colon wall that's not normal and sew it up. But it might be that if we ingest enough lactic acid, which we get from fermented foods, sauerkraut and kimchi and fermented fish, maybe we would not even get to the cancer. Of course, we can go ahead.
Right. I was going to bring up colonoscopies because there's been a fair bit of pushback against colonoscopies. Like I have some friends that have had it. They say, "Yeah, no big deal. You know, you drink this barium stuff, blah blah blah. I'm fine." And then there's other people who have gotten really, really sick from a colonoscopy. So I'm kind of curious as to your opinion on it.
Yeah. Well, so this device that they're sending up into your colon is a camera and a cutting tool, and it's on a flexible stick, right? So it's like something about the size of a garden hose being pushed up into your colon. So this thing has been in somebody else not long ago, and they do try to sterilize it with some toxic chemicals, but there's a lot of nooks and crannies and whatevers. I think that there's Scott. You have no mic.
Muted myself. Yeah. I mean, it's got to go up and around and everything else. So it's going to be.
It's the fold and up and yeah, that's right.
There was actually a study where they tested some of this equipment and they found a lot of bacteria that you don't want put in your body on it.
It may be okay, right? We do at times make these what are they called? Transplants, fecal transplants from one person to another. But this is an involuntary transplant, and you may be getting a transplant from somebody sick, which is not.
And that would explain why some people get really sick and some people have no problem, right? Because who knows what was on it each time. And also, you may be okay with that bacteria, and I might have a terrible time with it.
Right. And it will probably depend on the pH of the internal terrain, how resilient it is, how resilient your inner terrain is, the bacteria themselves, and the balance of the acidity that you're able to produce. Yeah, all that.
So George adds a comment here. He says, I drink chlorine dioxide 7 days a week.
Yeah, we have the equivalent of chlorine dioxide. We call it Amazing Soak and Amazing O. It's a lot like that. It actually produces hypochlorous acid, and it's the chemical that helps to insert oxygenation into the tissues. Yeah, I use the Amazing O all the time, 4 or 5 drops.
I just got my bottle of it, and I meant to, and you've told me this 100 times, Martin, but I wanted to ask you one more time, but since off the air, but since George brought it up and you brought it up, in a glass of water, like 8 ounces of water, how many drops would you put in?
4 drops per day is about a reasonable dose.
So is that 2 drops in one glass in the morning and 2 drops in one glass at night?
Sounds good. I put 4 drops into the pint of water that I'll drink through the night. Like I usually drink half the pint before I go and the other half sometime in the middle of the night, because that's how it works for me.
Okay. All right. So the other thing that you mentioned that I want to bring up was you've got this camera going through and it's got these little snippets. So if you've got, like, let's say you have 50 polyps.
Now they will usually find 1 or 2 at most.
Only 1 or 2?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, but even then, if you're snipping it, you are cutting away what separates the inside of your colon and your
that's definitely an injury. Yeah, you're definitely cutting into the wall.
Yeah, which is not a good thing.
No. Well, with the hopes that it will heal over and all of that. Anyway, it's the hopes that the solution that they use on the device will be able to contact all of the surfaces, which is what usually does not happen. As a piece gets missed.
Right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, let's go back to the theme of the day, which is colorectal cancer. So if you have cancer right in the rectum, that's the last piece about this deep of your anus and in, you have likely a problem because you won't be able to poop. And you will notice it. You will notice either blood or deformation of the poop that's coming out. Like,
Oh, this is when you've got the cancer, not afterwards.
yeah. Once you start growing a tumor in there, it's going to start deforming the poop that's coming out of you. It may break surfaces, so you will see blood. Although you may see blood on hemorrhoids too. By
Right.
the way, blood in the stool, right? If it's really bright red, it's from the last stage, right? Like it's just right in there somewhere in the hemorrhoidal plexus. That usually means less trouble than blood that has been digested, that the brown and digested looking blood, because that means you have trouble further up.
Right.
Anyway, so if you're noticing that, you definitely want to have yourself checked out. Yeah. Don't.
So if you have cancer there, current treatment options are basically surgery, chemotherapy, immunotherapy. And if you don't want to do that, you need to do some prevention things.
Right. Well, okay. So if it's in the rectum, you probably will lose your ability to have natural bowel movements, and they will cut a hole in your side and attach a colostomy bag to it. So you will be now stuck with a bag it's a real not
It's
fun.
a nightmare.
It's
a
not
nightmare.
fun to deal with. Your intimate life will change.
Yeah.
You will have this smelly bag that you'll have on your side all the time, open to the
Right.
elements.
Life is over as we know it.
Oh, it's not fun. It can be
So don't do
reversed.
that.
It
Don't
can
do
be
that.
reversed. Some people have had it reversed after they have been repaired. So, but
There's
it's
that.
a major operation, and major operations are inherently dangerous. Every time you go into an anesthetic, it's not guaranteed that you're coming back.
Yeah, you may not wake up.
Yeah.
And that's just from that part of it. Forget about what they're trying to do when they try to fix you.
Yeah.
So you can have the surgery, they can cut you open, you can do chemotherapy, which is basically killing everything, immunotherapy, I don't know what that is, or you can do some preventative things. So we're looking at diet and nutrition, exercise, no smoking, no excess alcohol consumption, managing your gut health, and managing your inflammation.
Right. Why do we get cancer? Because we have introduced toxicity, malnutrition, stagnation, and trauma. Well, that's an emotional thing. That emotional component is super important, but we're just doing the physical stuff here in this talk.
Right.
But I want to tell you, the emotional stuff, to me, I would use the metaphor of an iceberg, where if you see an iceberg, the stuff that's above the waterline is actually about 10% of the total mass of the iceberg. And likewise, the physical manifestation that you're seeing here now, at whatever that is, has an emotional component that's below the waterline, and it's big, and you need to deal with it. And colon cancer travels on the vibration of a grievance, of unforgiveness. And it's what's eating you as opposed to what you're eating that is involved here.
Yeah, and there's a whole science and encyclopedia of information about which emotions are and which, like you were saying, grievances are involved in, the physical manifestation. So it really behooves everybody to get in and do some research and start learning about this stuff, because if you find something's happening on the outside, find out what's causing it from the inside, because it's like the seed, right? You put the seed in the ground, you don't see it until it pops up, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately for us, when it pops up, it's usually late, not necessarily too late, but
it's
late.
well established. Like the bamboo would be a great metaphor, because bamboo, for 5 years, you don't see much, but it's building underground. It's building a massive network of roots. And then once it gets going, it starts growing like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. So we've only got a few minutes left, Martin. So let's talk about one of the products that we have from Exela, the Strata Flora, and how it can help.
Yeah. Yeah, we do make Strata Flora in our own shop. And the components in it include fiber, lecithin, which is an emulsifier and thing that makes things smoother. Fiber is there to absorb water and to increase the bulk. And then what we have in there is a whole bunch of oligosaccharides, primarily inulin, which is the food for the microbes. Remember, probiotics are like the seeds. Prebiotics is like the fertilizer in the inner garden. And you do need a lot of that. So Strata Flora has both. We have the probiotic and prebiotic in it. And it's the microbes that you would find in sauerkraut, in kombucha, in kimchi, in yogurt, in kefir or kefir, depends on your pronunciation. And we also have in it a whole bunch of herbs that deal with the functioning of both the gut and the liver and the pancreas. And we also have in it antiparasitics. Parasites are underappreciated in America because they are really richly present in our environment. We don't like to talk about it, but they're with us. And they do cause trouble. So the Strata Flora has enzymes, antiparasitics, minerals, and so on. The whole thing. We call it tongue to tail, or from the mouth to the anus. It's taking care of every stage with a particular set of nutrients.
Right. We have a question from Vladimir. I'd like us to get it in before we have to go. How do you obliterate colon cancer, polyps, or cells?
Right. And we don't like to use the war model to obliterate and nuke and cut and whatever. We leave that to doctors. What you want to do is you want to build health. You want to build healthy terrain. So you need to make sure that you have enough fiber, you have good structured water, you have plenty of, what are they called? Oligosaccharides, which would be they're soluble fiber and insoluble fiber in your food. You need both. And most of all, you need to have the correct pH in your colon, which needs to be sufficiently acidic. So when there is enough butyric acid and lactic acid, propionic, valeric, acetic, all of those, when there's enough of that in your body, then there's no need for the cancer cell to be producing that. So that would be the approach. If you do find yourself with cancer or something like that, we would recommend an immune system support. We have a natural one. We call it Elagiplex. It's based on elagitannins, which are found in seeds. We carefully process it, but it has many more ingredients than just that. It has coenzyme Q10, it has graviola, it has, what is that thing called? Tahibo. Many names. Tahibo goes under 3 or 4 different names. Anyway, all of these things are helping the immune system to accelerate. It's called, what's the word for it, Scott? It's not coming to me. I don't want to say the words that are going to get us banned on the channel. And so, okay, I had to start talking about something else to remember it. It's called...
Which is a great time. It's a great time to remind everybody that we're uncensored on Telegram, next t.me/lifeandco. We put a link to Strata Flora into the comment section for everybody to be able to click on it. Go check it out. There's lots of information and research, but really head over to Telegram, and Martin doesn't have to worry about getting us both into trouble.
Yeah. And the word is apoptosis, and it's about fixing the cells, helping the immune system to shut off what is not good. Anyway, I have to go to the other side. So thanks, folks. Look up Elagiplex and Strata Flora at life-enthusiast lifeenthusiast.com.
Right. And make sure that you do a like, share this with your friends. And we appreciate you all. This has been the Life Enthusiast online radio and TV network, restoring vitality to you and the planet. We go live every Thursday at 2:30 Eastern, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us, everybody.